Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it's great to be in the No Woke Zone. I want to thank the Center for Fundamental Rights for their kind invitation. It was an easy drive for me coming from Zagreb by car, and it's great to be in Hungary, still a safe place for our views. So I wanted to leave you with a few just central messages. First, the lessons we can draw from the events in 1989 and the collapse of communism. It was not the end of history, as Francis Fukuyama, he famously coined the phrase. We're here today because we see that ideologies, harmful ideologies, do not disappear so easily. So the battle continues, but we must draw strength from what happened in 1989, because communism in the end collapsed. But it took time and it wasn't easy, and I would suggest that it was not possible without the heroic leadership of people like St. John Paul II. We should remember his example. We are creatures created by God, and our nature is not malleable. Certain iron truths cannot be changed, no matter how much we rebel. Reality exists and does not depend on our feelings. Genuine human flourishing, what we all want for ourselves and for our children, can happen only in accord with reality and never opposed to it. I would say also that political ideologies, including woke ideology, assume the function of religion. They actually become more like religions, false religions, instead of just political ideas. So it is. But what is exactly woke? What does the word mean? I would suggest that it presents its own dogmas. Wokeness describes alleged social injustices caused by various factors like race, sex, or even gender identity. These alleged injustices are inherent to Western societies, according to the woke ideologues, and create a hierarchy of power in which certain groups oppress their victims. Wokeness reinforces the idea that it is advantageous to be a victim. It's something desired. One example where this leads, the madness that woke leads to, you can look at the Twitter account called End Wokeness. It shows a tragic case of where one woman purposely blinded herself because she said that she was meant to be blind from birth, and now she's blind. She did that kind of harm to herself, wanting to become a victim. Woke madness, because I would say it's a false religion, tolerates no dissent. There's no room for debate or dissent. These people do not want a discussion. Heresy is detected. We're all heretics, according to them, and they must be canceled. Corporations have become activists in spreading these ideas. Disney is perhaps the most egregious example of a huge corporation abusing its power, and it must end, and I commend Governor DeSantis' leadership in his fight against Disney. Lies cannot be spread without the indoctrination of children. It's an absolute necessity for the woke people to indoctrinate children. Otherwise, these ideas would never spread through our societies. And that's why they're so interested in public education. They must control the schools. But we must learn a lesson from this, and it's something that the left takes very seriously. Culture matters. Who controls the narrative, who controls public opinion, in the end will benefit politically. And so we must fight. We must take culture seriously as well. Journalism today is very superficial. They are not discussing what matters most, unfortunately, and so people are distracted. We live in an age of social media, but unfortunately I would say that people have never been more uninformed than today. They don't really understand what's at stake. And so we must take journalism seriously and must be aware that the mass media is not our friend. St. Augustine, one of the greatest saints in the history of the Catholic Church and one of the founders of Western civilization, said the following: "The truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose and it will defend itself. Look what has happened to Tucker Carlson. I believe he will reemerge and his audience will only grow because he speaks the truth. And this is a great example of this. It's impossible to silence someone who has the courage to speak the truth. And if he's allowed, and he'll find a platform in the future, I'm sure, the truth will speak for itself. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, there are many reasons Hungary is vilified in the Western media. Perhaps the main reason is that your government, the government of Viktor Orban, boldly defends your nation's Christian history and identity. This is simply unacceptable to the elites in Brussels, Washington, D.C., and other centers of power. It is no coincidence, therefore, that woke ideology, but also the totalitarian ideologies of the 20th century as well, are all anti-Christian. Christian culture must be undermined in order for these false religions to rise and replace it. But Christianity is much more resilient than the secularists think. It actually thrives under persecution. As Christ told his disciples, the servant cannot be greater than the master. And as the world rejected him, so it will reject his followers. We must also be willing to suffer for the truth. We know that defending the truth is not always pleasant, and we may have to endure some scorn and name-calling, but that is simply how it must be. We must do this with a badge of honor. And the irony is that this latest wave of persecution against Christianity, but also against common sense, is happening within a culture which was once fully Christian, Western civilization. But our elites today have rejected Christianity. Therefore, I urge you all to stay strong and to persevere in defending what is good and what is true. People around the world are inspired by Hungary's example. We must fight in the arena of politics, but it is culture that in the end will determine the fate of our nations. In defending the truth, we must always do this with love, This is how we can win the hearts and minds of the next generation. One concrete example is something I was involved in Croatia 10 years ago, where we succeeded in a national referendum to define marriage as a union between one man and one woman in the Croatian constitution. The government at the time was hostile, very opposed to this, but we persevered, and now marriage is defined in our constitution. I'm happy to say that this is the only occasion that I made it into the New York Times. They were very unhappy, but they asked for my comments, why we did this, and I was pleased to give them my remarks. One final thought. I decided to run for public office in order to fight for a better future for my children. They are worth fighting for, and so united we stand. Thank you for this great privilege today, and may God bless you all.